positive phototropism. Positive phototropism. And the root growth is an example of growth movement of root is an example of negative phototropism. The root movement is an example of root movement of plant is an example of negative phototropism because it is bend away from light and the shoot bend towards light. When the shoot bend towards light, which means that it is towards the stimuli. It is towards the stimuli. That means that phototropism is a positive phototropism. But in the case of root, it's bent away from the stimulus. Here the stimulus is light. The roots are bending away from the stimulus, away from the light, which is simply means that tropism is a negative phototropism. Negative phototropism. So phototropism are of two types, positive phototropism and a negative phototropism. Phototropism means the plant growth, or otherwise we can say that the movement of plant growth towards light. Movement of plant growth towards light. Then phototropism are of two types, positive phototropism and a negative phototropism. If the movement of plant towards stimulus, then we can say that it is positive, and away from the stimulus, then we can say that it is negative. For example, in the case of shoot growth, that shoot bend towards the stimulus, towards light. So shoot growth is an example of positive phototropism and root growth is an example of negative phototropism. Then geotropism. Movement of plant growth towards gravity is called a movement of plant growth towards gravity is called a geotropism. Movement of plant growth towards gravity is called a geotropism. It is also considered as positive geotropism, and or otherwise we can say that it is classified as positive geotropism and negative geotropism. How will you say an example regarding positive geotropism and negative geotropism? Positive geotropism means, as we know that if the movement is towards stimulus, here the stimulus is gravity. The direction of gravity, as we all know that the direction of gravity towards earth, it is downward direction. So the root movement is also in the downward direction. Shoot movement is in the upward direction. Shoot movement is in the upward direction. Here the gravity, the stimulus direction is downward. That means root movement is an example of positive geotropism because root movement is in the downward direction, stimulus is also in the downward direction, or otherwise we can say that gravity is in the downward direction. So with respect to the stimulus, if we consider the root movement is towards the stimulus. Root movement is towards the stimulus. Then we can say that is an example of positive geotropism. Negative geotropism. Shoot movement of shoot is upward. So it is opposite to the direction, or otherwise we can say that it is away from the stimulus. Therefore, the example shoot growth is an example of negative geotropism. So phototropism is related to light, geotropism is related to gravity. Then chemotropism. Chemotropism is related to chemicals. Simply which means that the movement of plant growth towards chemicals is called a chemotropism. Towards chemicals is called a chemotropism. For example, growth of pollen tube is an example of chemotropism. Then hydrotropism. Hydrotropism is simple. Hydro is related to water. So the plant movement or growth of plant movement, or otherwise we can say that the movement of plant growth towards water is called a hydrotropism. So photo related to light, geo related to gravity, chemo related to chemicals, and hydro related to water. Movement of plant growth towards light is called a phototropism. Movement of plant growth towards gravity called geotropism. Movement of plant growth towards chemicals is called chemotropism, and the movement of plant growth towards water is called hydrotropism. That's all about types of movement in plants. So moving to the next topic called plant hormones. Here we want to discuss about what is meant by plant hormones, or what all the plant hormones are. We want to study in this chapter. So first of all, moving to plant hormones, or before moving to plant hormones, we want to know about what is meant by hormone. As we all heard the name hormone. Hormone is a familiar name. Hormone is a familiar name with respect to the living organisms, as the human beings also produce some hormones. there will be hormonal deficiency, and there will be some diseases related to hormonal deficiency. Like this is a term familiar term, hormones. What is mean by a hormone? The chemical substances which coordinate and control the activities of living organisms. The chemical substances which coordinate the which coordinate and control the activities. The chemical substances which coordinate and control the activities of living organisms. So the activities of living organisms is coordinated and controlled by some chemical substances, and that chemical substances is called hormones. So hormones are chemical substances which coordinate and control, which coordinate and control the activities of living organisms. Coordinate and control the activities of living organisms. That means that the activities of living organisms can be controlled by some chemical substances or coordinated by some chemical substances. That chemical substances are called hormone. In the plant cases also, the movement of plants, or otherwise we can say that the activities of plants can be controlled and coordinated by some chemical compounds. The activities of plants can be controlled and coordinated by some chemical substances, or otherwise we can say that some chemical compounds. That chemical substances or chemical compounds is called plant hormones. So these chemical substances, or otherwise we can say that the chemical compounds or the hormones, can be generated naturally in plants. That is called plant hormones. That is produced naturally in plants. In the case of human beings also, the hormones are produced naturally. But in the case of hormonal deficiency, when we go to the hospital, they will be injected some hormones due to that deficiency. So it is a familiar name, hormones. Hormones are chemical substances. Hormones are chemical substances which control and coordinate the activity of living organisms. In the case of plants, it is also same. In the case of plants, the hormones plays a vital role in the control and coordination, and it is naturally produced in plants. It's a chemical substance or compounds naturally produced in plants, which are called hormones. So here we want to discuss about 5 hormones in plants: auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, abscisic acid, and ethylene. Auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, abscisic acid, and ethylene. So first of all, we want to know that what is meant by auxin, or otherwise we can say what are the functions of auxin in the case of plants. So auxin synthesized at the shoot tip. It is synthesized at the shoot tips, or otherwise we can say that it is synthesized that it is produced at shoot tip. So it helps in the cell to grow longer. So the hormone auxin helps the cells to grow longer. Then it is involved in the which hormone? Auxin hormone is involved in the tropical movement of plants. Tropic movement of plants. So it is produced, or otherwise we can say that it is synthesized at the shoot tip. It helps the cells to grow longer, and auxin involved in the tropic movement of plants. Auxin involved in the tropic movement of plants. So which hormone helps in the growth of the stem? Which hormone helps in the growth of the stem? Gibberellin. Gibberellin helps in the growth of stem. Gibberellin helps in the growth of stem. Next one is cytokinin. The hormone which produce or which promotes cell division. The hormone which promotes cell division is called a cytokinin. The hormone which produce or promotes cell division is called, which promotes the cell division, cell to multiply, is called a cytokinin. The hormone which inhibits growth. The hormone which inhibits growth is called a abscisic acid. It is also the cause of wilting of leaves. Wilting of leaves. Then the hormone which helps in the artificial ripening of fruits. That is a familiar name. The hormone which helps the artificial ripening of fruits is called ethylene. Ethylene. So there will be 5 hormones we want to study about plant hormones. That is auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, abscisic acid, and ethylene. Auxin is synthesized at the shoot tip, helps the cell to grow longer, and finally it involved in the tropical movement of plants, tropic movement of plants. Gibberellin, which helps in the growth of stem. So which hormone helps in the growth of stem is gibberellin. So cytokinin promotes cell multiplication or cell division. Cell division means cells are multiplied. Cells are multiplied. One cell is divided into two cells is divided into four, like that. Cells are multiplied. So which hormone promotes cell division? It is cytokinin. Which hormone inhibits growth? It is abscisic acid inhibits growth. Which hormones helps in the artificial ripening of fruits? Which is ethylene. Ethylene. So the chemical compounds or substances which is produced naturally in plants is called plant hormones. Here we have to study about 5 plant hormones. So there is a shortcut to memorize the 5 plant hormones, such that the shortcut is like the term A cage. Remember the term A cage. A cage. This A says auxin, cytokinin, abscisic acid, gibberellin, and ethylene. E indicates ethylene, G indicates gibberellin, A abscisic acid, C cytokinin, and A is auxin. This is the shortcut to remember all the 5 hormones. So the chemical compounds or substances which produce naturally in plants is called plant hormones, and the duty of the hormone is the control and coordination of the activity in plants. In the case of human being also, there will be hormones are produced naturally. So these are chemical substances or compounds. That's all about plant hormones and hormones. So right now we are moving to the structure of neuron. Structure of neuron. As in the earlier classes we studied about the structure of neuron. Here is a small description about the structure of neuron. The structure consists of dendrite, dendron, cell body, nucleus, axon, myelin sheath, and Schwann cell, and finally synapse. That is the nerve ending. So here we want to discuss about what is the important duties of each and every parts related to the neurons. First of all, there will be dendrite is there, the tip, then the dendron is there, the branch, the nucleus which is in the cell body, the axon is the longest filament of the cell body or the longest filament, and the insulator cover of the axon is called the myelin sheath, and the Schwann cell encircles the axon, and the synapse, the final, the end point that connect the duty of the synapse is that that interconnects the end point of one neuron to the starting point of another neuron. So this is a bridge. Which one? Synapse. So we will discuss each and every time. First of all, dendrite. Dendrite receives the chemical signal. Dendrite receives the chemical signal. Dendrite receives the chemical signal. It receives the nerve impulse, that means in the form of chemical signal. So this is only one neuron structure. There is another neuron structure in the previous place. Here also, after the neuron, there is also another neuron structure. There will be, this is a continuous process. So from the previous neuron structure, through synapse, the dendrite receives the chemical signal. Dendrite receives the chemical signal. So in dendrite, what happens? The chemical signal is converted into electrical signal. The chemical signal is converted into the electrical signal. That electrical signal is